What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest. We'll go through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we were given some news updates. According to the Detroit Lions, they have made some changes in their front office, some promotions, some movements, and also the new addition to the front office. Plus, we got pressers from pretty much every positional coach, and I have some notes. So let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
And welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. We're back with another episode of Lions Latest. Do want to put it out there, the Aiden Hutchinson video is coming soon. It will be the longest of our draft profile videos, so let me just throw that out there. That way you're mentally prepared. So if you're going to watch that video, and I do appreciate it, it's going to be a little long, but I want to, put all the things in there that I want to show off about this player, because this was the topic of the draft. Anyway, let's focus on this episode of Lions Latest. So I'm going to start with some of the front office movements that we had. There's just a couple little notes here, and then we'll get into some of the notes that I've taken away from pressers of our positional coaches. So let's start with the front office moves. Let's start with the big one, Brandon Sosna. The addition of Brandon Sosna, we talked about it. He's coming from USC. He's a big part of that organization. He also spent time back with the Cleveland Browns. So he was with John Dorsey, who John Dorsey was a mentor to Brandon Sosna. But this is a guy, as we said in the video when we hired Brandon Sosna, so I won't go too deep into it, but he has done a lot of really good things wherever he's been. I mean, going back to just coming out of high school, the dude was an AAU coach at one point, and he was still in high school. It was like, wait, what? He's an AAU coach. And then you also take a look at USC being a big part, being labeled as the guy, that kind of led the search of Lincoln Riley to be the next head coach of USC, who is now there as he is leaving, but also the little things that he was involved in, just in day-to-day operations, fixing kind of the little things. Everything that he seemed to touch seemed to get better from what we know about Brandon Sosna. So he has been given his title with the Detroit Lions, and I'm sure Dan Campbell at some point will eventually hit on this more. He said he would talk about this later when they knew exactly what his title was going to be, but he has been listed as the Detroit Lions Senior Director of Football Administration, and this is more on the football operations side rather than the player personnel side, which does make a lot of sense, I think, when you take a look at his background, because a lot of things that notably he's done that we know about isn't necessarily like on the scouting side. It's more on the day-to-day operations side, the football operations side. So this was a guy that seems to have a ton of success everywhere he's been, and I got to believe that John Dorsey was just like, dude, we got to get this guy in here. They've talked in the past, and now here he is with the Detroit Lions, and it looks like they're trying to figure out exactly what his role is going to be, but they just wanted him in our front office. So I get it. He's had a lot of success. Get those, guys that are very successful in the front office. It makes a ton of sense. So apparently that's going to be more of his role. Also, another big move was Mike Disner has kind of taken another step, at least in terms of his title, up the ladder in the Detroit Lions front office, now being named the Chief Operating Officer from being the Vice President of Football Business Administration. And usually the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, is like the second in command. He's kind of like the second up to the CEO. I guess it's probably a little bit different in the football side of things, but I guess it's just kind of working his way up a little bit more. Now, if you remember when Brad Holmes came in, he was promoted into taking on a little bit more of the salary cap responsibilities, handling a little bit more of that, where Brad Holmes has credited him of handling the salary cap. It allows them to make moves. He's on top of all of that. And he took a little bit more of that side on when Brad Holmes came into the Detroit Lions organization, to allow him to be more hands-on with the player personnel, with the scouting side, which is what his expertise is. So it led to an immediate promotion, basically, for a guy like Mike Disner, and now it looks like he's taking another step up. What I love about this is that when you look at some of these names, these guys that are holdovers from the last regime, I think that's really cool, is that it wasn't, we talked about this when it initially happened, but they didn't immediately come in and fire everybody and change the entire front office. And what you see is after the draft, usually a lot of times contracts are up for scouts, so you get a lot of movement. But when these guys immediately came in, yes, there were changes, but they didn't just fire everybody and completely clean house. They gave guys, in their opinion, an opportunity to prove themselves. And a guy like Mike Disner has now continued to work his way up the ladder within this Lions organization. So now From my understanding, usually a COO or a chief operating officer has more impact on the day-to-day operations. He's closely working with, the top guys like the Brad Holmes. So I don't know exactly what the changes will be there, but he does have a new title with the Detroit Lions. Also, Lance Newmark, he's been here for a little while. He has been promoted to the Senior Director of Player Personnel from being the Director of Player Personnel. Now he's the Senior Director of Player Personnel. So now he's that dude, basically. I guess essentially he's that dude now. Also, Brian Hudspeth, who was the Detroit Lions National Scout, has been promoted to Assistant Director of College Scouting. Has moved himself up the ladder a little bit further. You have the area scouts, you have the assistant scouts, you kind of work your way up. So he's in the college department. That's, of course, scouting college players that come out for the draft, for UDFAs. That's the side that he's working on. Joe, I think his name is Keller. I think that's how you pronounce it, Joe Keller. He went from being a pro scout to the Assistant Director of Pro Scouting. So again, taking another step up, being a pro scout and now being the Assistant Director of Pro Scouting, which means you're scouting within the NFL. So you're scouting the players that are currently in the NFL. You're scouting professional players. You're always having tabs on guys that could become free agents. That's kind of that. Demi Smith, again, I may be pronouncing these names wrong. I apologize. Demi Smith, who is going from a personnel assistant to a scout with the Detroit Lions. So from being an assistant working with the personnel, now a scout for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, we have Gina Noel. Hey, these names is tough, but I'm trying, okay? Who's going from the Director of Team Operations to Senior Director of Football Operations. And finally, we have Jesse Giambra. I'm probably messing the name up there. Who's going from the Coordinator of Team Operations to Manager of Team Operations and Head Coach Administration. So those are the changes that have been noted within the Detroit Lions front office. So let's kind of bounce around through some of these notes that I have from the positional coaches. Now, these are really in no specific order. I kind of just took the notes, but we're going to talk about some of the major takeaways that I had from hearing the positional coaches. I watched them on DetroitLions.com, so they're all up there if you want to check out the full pressers from any of these coaches. There was like 8 of them. However, I took some specific notes, so let's dive into it. I want to start off with Todd Wash first, the Detroit Lions defensive line coach. I love listening to Todd Wash, and he always gives good breakdowns. He also kind of gives you an insight on where certain players may be playing positionally, so I love the breakdown that he gives. And we've talked about the philosophy change, the scheme change this season a ton. We've talked about it a ton. I'm sure we'll talk about it many more times going forward. But I like the way that Todd Wash kind of broke it down. He said it like this. He said, we're going to play more attack and react. All right, that's the way that he put it. Now, I would say that versus playing more read and react. He said more attack and react. So it's still a one-gapping scheme. You attack your gap, and then you react once you attack. So he basically said, we need to set the tone. We need to be the guys that's, making the plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. We need to be more so on the other side of the line of scrimmage, really setting and dictating the tone. And we're going to drop this Aiden Hutchinson video soon. I think it's definitely worth checking out because you see the ability of a guy like Hutchinson to really do that. Because Todd Wash, he's always about the run, which he definitely should be. They have that thing up there that says, hey, earn the right to rush the passer. And even he said, when we get to training camp, right now we're not going in pads. We get to training camp. That's where we have to get better, is stopping the run. No, it's not the fun thing to talk about. It's fun to talk about sacks, but we need to stop the run this season. I'm just saying that has to happen, and that's where it has to start. Wash continued with saying, the game is a little bit more spread out now. He said it's kind of like basketball on the field, and he said you need to have, more athletes on the field. He said right now it kind of fits our personnel. He said we're not overly big on the defensive front. He said really aside from Ali McNeil. So for us, athletically, it kind of fits us a little bit more that this is the style that we're playing. Speaking of Aiden Hutchinson, he said Hutchinson is a better athlete than I thought when I watched him on tape. And he said, I guess that just, shows how well I can evaluate, these players, but he looks like a better athlete than I saw on tape. And he has this ability to lean and bend that we didn't necessarily always see on his tape that he shows up when he's on the field. That ability to lean and bend. All right, now, hey, I'll say this, a little peek into the video. I definitely think there's that ability to bend, especially in the upper body at the top of a pass rush set. It's just some of that lack of ankle flexion to really turn the corner sometimes at the top of the arc. But there is some flexibility definitely in the upper body that I think you see. It's not elite, but it's definitely there. Gave us some insight on some player positions. He said that with James Houston, they're kind of dialing back his role a little bit. I think Kelvin Shepard touched on this as well. Initially they kind of had to play 3 different positions, like I would guess off ball, Sam linebacker, rush positions on pass downs, and they had a lot on his plate, and they were saying he was playing, slow, thinking when he's on the field. And even Kelvin Shepard went into this. He said, look, with this new defensive philosophy, which is also going to affect the linebackers, we talk about the defensive front, it does affect the linebackers as well. He said you can't be out there thinking, right? You can't be hesitating. You have to just go. You have to just play on the fly, react on on the fly. And with a guy like James Houston, they said he was a little bit more hesitant because how much they were putting on his plate. He's a young player. He's still trying to figure it out. So they've reduced that a little bit. And Todd Wash said that he'd be playing Sam in base packages and he'd be playing a rush position in sub packages, of course, if he's on the field. So Sam, as we know, will be walked up towards the line of scrimmage. Think of a Julian Okudah. We kind of predicted this. That's what his role is going to be with the Lions, they said. But we know he has that off-ball ability. So as he continues to learn, they're going to continue to probably give him reps there. But right now, they said they're reducing his role a little bit to that. All right? And the Sam linebacker, you have to handle tight ends off the line. Sometimes you got to bump. You got to drop to the flats. You got to rush the pass. Or you got to be able to get out there and stop the runs at the edge. So it's all those kind of things, but his best attribute was rushing the passer, no question. So it makes a ton of sense that that would be the kind of role that they would put him in. He also said that Josh Paschal can kind of play every role along the defensive line, which we definitely saw in film that he could do that. He's going to play outside, he could play inside. He also said that Romeo Okudah, who is going to be playing, as a base rush end, which to me makes me immediately think, okay, weak side defensive end, especially in an underfront, because your weak side defensive end a lot of times is that nasty pass rusher that's just getting downhill. So that's what I'm thinking, weak side defensive end, Hutchinson, strong side defensive end. But he also even went on to say that, hey, you could possibly put him at Sam linebacker if you needed to. And I think the way that kind of thing we could end up seeing it at some point this season is if you had a guy like Josh Paschal who is balling, right, on the defensive line. You're like, you know what? We want Paschal on the field. We want him to play the defensive end spot, and then we'll kick, Romeo to Sam. That way we can have them all on the field. So that flexibility based on what Romeo showed us last year is there, the ability to drop a little bit. Kelvin Shepard also spoke on Jared Davis, and he's got, that connection with Jared Davis, and really with the entire linebacker room, he was trying to make it clear that, no one is given a spot. He said, a guy like Alex Anzalone, because of his time, he's going to come in as, the top guy. As we've seen, he's still the starter right now. But even he has to earn that role to be the guy. He said, we want to put the best players on the field, and all these guys are going to get their opportunity. With Jared Davis, he talked about kind of the opposite of James Houston, how Davis, he said, he's a man's man. He understands that you can put him at off ball, you can put him at edge, you can put him here, you can put him there, and he understands it. One quote that I took away when he was talking about Jared Davis specifically is he basically, in a way, kind of said that Davis was kind of told that it's football or nothing when he was with the last regime. Kelvin Shepard was here, and they kind of lost a player. And he said Davis was in a really dark place at that time, right? He was a high pick. They come in, they change the scheme. And I guess that's maybe the way that they were giving off the impression was that it's football or nothing. And for him, it was really tough for him. It's for Davis, right? I mean, he stopped seeing the field. His role started to diminish. His scheme changed. He was trying to bulk up, trying to fit in. Couldn't find a role. He was struggling. Then he goes, to the Jets this past season. Isn't healthy for most of the year, struggles when he is on the field, and now here he is back to Lions. But what I love about Davis, and even when he's just coming around taking pictures with people, what's cool about Jared Davis is that he was you could just tell he was happy to be back. And he was even saying it like, yeah, this is home. This is where I want to be. I want to be back in Detroit. So that's awesome. But Kelvin Shepard clearly likes the versatility that a guy like Jared Davis brings to the table. I'm really rooting for the guy. At some point, we're going to do a film video on him to break it down where the Lions may look to utilize him. But from what I know so far, I think downhill, take away responsibilities. Again, letting him play fast. And I think this philosophy speaks to that because it's that kind of, okay, here's your assignment, play faster, rush the quarterback, those kind of things. It just makes sense. Look on Malcolm Rodriguez. Malcolm Rodriguez, such a smart player, where he's at as a young guy. And this is a guy that I think a lot of us fans, I know I believe it, Rad believes it, that this will be a guy that very quickly has a big impact on this defense as a rookie. And you may not expect it, but this eventually will become a starter for the Lions. I believe that will be the case as well. The former safety now playing linebacker, his movement skills, his smarts. I mean, just the entire package he's had. We've done a full video on him if you want to check that thing out. Staying on the defense side of the ball, Aubrey Pleasant. He spoke a little bit on Jeff Okudah, saying that with Okudah, they're looking for those small victories with Okudah. He said he's pleased with his involvement, being on time, with the clipboard, just how involved that he is. But they want those small victories for Jeff Okudah. They want him to continue to build on every single day those small victories for Jeff Okudah. And he said, right now, I'll tell you this, Okudah he's locked in. He is locked in all the way right now. So there you go. There's some optimism for Hefe if you needed any. But honestly, I thought last year at training camp the dude was locked in. It's just unfortunate he got hurt. He looked different. I'm telling you. I know he's saying, and the guy looks different in person. I mean, he does. He just kind of sets himself apart as a cornerback. He looks different than a lot of guys in that room. Just his build.
My drive just took over. Like I feel like I've just been hungry. Like I haven't ate in years. That hunger's just been inside of me since the injury. Well, really even before the injury. So I've had that feeling for, man, it's about to be probably 2 years. Just that hunger. So I'm really ready to go out there, and just play to the best of my ability.
He's saying right now he's on the winning side of those small victories. I see what you did there, Aubrey Pleasant. That was slick. He also spoke about the two new additions, Kirby Joseph and Chase Lucas. And first off with Chase Lucas, he said, I feel like our evaluation process with these guys coming out was correct. He said Chase Lucas has that short area quickness. He's a flexible athlete. Obviously, the experience that he has, he's a leader on the field. And right now, what we've been hearing from reports that he's had a lot of success so far through these spring workouts, right? Obviously, they got to put pads on, but he's had a lot of success. I think we hit on all of those things when we did our video. So shout out to us. Shout out to us. Give a clap for us. With Kirby Joseph, Aubrey Pleasant said that, he basically spoke on his energy and his ability to be around the football all the time. He's always around the ball, but the energy that he has, the life that he brings to that safety room is outstanding. Now, Brian Duker spoke a little bit more on what he brings to the table. Kirby right now is above where I thought he'd be at personally at this time. He's further along than we thought that he would be at this time. Right now for him, it's about the verbiage, play a ton of snaps. So it's about getting those reps as well for Kirby Joseph. But we even heard that in the podcast, like, man, this guy, he just wants to be different. He wants to be great. And you love that about Kirby Joseph. So right now they're working with him in packages. Where does he need to be in bunch packages? The verbiage, all of those type of things. So he said one thing about Kirby Joseph is that he always, every day in practice, is getting his hands on the football. And that is a trait that you love with safeties, are guys that get their hands on the football. Because they even spoke about Imani and said, look, Imani, we want him to keep taking the football away and capitalize on those opportunities. One thing to put yourself in that spot, but also capitalize. And so we want to see Tracy Walker take another step, saying that he's always getting his hands on the football. I saw him get his hands on the football multiple times when I was there for one day. I believe it. We know he's long, but he's instinctual. He is a guy that's played the receiver position. He's very comfortable tracking the football downfield. He is a guy that consistently brings a different element to the team because of his playmaking ability in the back end. Deshaun Elliott, Tracy are the guys. They basically put it like that. I mean, they're the guys right now. And that leadership that Elliott brings coming from a winning organization, it's going to be, I think it'd be huge for guys like that to get off to a good start this year. Brian Duker spoke on Iffy and the transition, playing some safety, getting safety reps. Thought his breakdown was short, sweet, and really good. He basically said it like this. With Iffy, the skill set that he has, Iffy Melifonwu, who we're talking about here, the cornerback, playing some safety reps this season, or off season at least, they're saying with his skill set, where he can really match up with, certain players on opponents like tight ends, understanding the safety communications, understanding run fits from the safety spots means that we can make him a little bit more flexible during the season, where when you have those specific matchups, he understands the safety position. Usually safeties are the players that are getting those matchups with certain tight ends, right? So if you're facing Travis Kelce, those are the guys that are usually getting those matchups, not necessarily your cornerback. So I thought he broke it down really well there with the skill set that he has. He can play off coverage well from what I've seen on the film. That'll come soon where we break down the secondary. But he plays off coverage well. He's a great athlete. We know that. He's a solid tackler. I think they still want to clean it up. And he even brought up there's less run fits from his position. With that being said, though, he did struggle on press coverage. He did. And even against tight ends, Kyle Pitts gave him problems when he was trying to get up and press. And a lot of times for safety, you're playing a lot more off coverage reps or in a squat coverage situation. So for him, I think it does make sense when you break it down that way, where it's not like, hey, he's a full-time safety, but for him to have that versatility, he needs to understand how to play the safety position. That way, if we come into a game and a team has a safety that's very dynamic, maybe from an inline spot, but we want Iffy to match up with him, well, he has to understand how to play the safety position, because other than then covering the tight end, he would be completely lost and he would be exposed. So I love the way that he broke that down. It makes a ton of sense. That was spoke on CJ Moore. It was like, CJ Moore is nice because of his frame. You put it in the box, playing dime packages. He spoke about the Arizona game. I really like CJ Moore. Limited film, I really like the way that he played and the versatility that he showed. He's just a reliable guy that you can trust when you put out there on the field. So CJ Moore is another guy in the safety battle. If we go more than 3, I think CJ Moore is number 4. But that will be the question, is how many safeties do the Lions will keep? The secondary is deep. We talk about Chase Lucas. It's deep. He could be cornerback 7. It's very deep this offseason, which is a good problem to have, but it is deep. Randall L., of course, spoke about the receiver additions, how excited he is for that. And then you also have, the offensive line, Hank Fraley, speaking about the entire offensive line getting back together. But when the Jared Goff side, we did get this podcast from Jared Goff, which shout out to Banks. He actually sent me this link. I listened to the whole thing. It was really good. We heard from Mark Brunell, and he kind of broke it down, what he's seeing from Goff early in the spring, where he's at now. And this had to give you a lot of, like, if you wanted a reason, you wanted someone to talk him up, you wanted someone to be optimistic, that's not me, well, Mark Brunell is your guy, because he basically said it like this. He said, Jared and Ben, they've spent a lot of time together, working on concepts, taking a look at what they were good at last season, what he was good at with the LA Rams, and he said he's not kidding. He has had an excellent spring so far. His work ethic, he's putting in the work, he's earning it. He said he has elite arm talent. Now, Goff on the podcast said what he does in the offseason, what his focus is on, is being in really good shape. And he said this year is different because he's not getting traded. He's not going through rehab, right? He's not recovering from an injury. He has an opportunity to just, not use that excuse, but to just focus on himself. And he said right now he feels like he's in good shape. Even Jason Kabinda brought it up on the podcast where he's like, hey, man, you look good. That's the first guy to say it, but you look good. And he said for him in the offseason, his focus on, keeping his stroke smooth is how he said it. That passing. He said maybe at some point I'll get on where I don't feel like I need to do that. But the mechanics, keeping that very smooth is what he focuses on during the offseason.
Personally is to help him have the best season of his career. One thing that we've done is included him a lot in what we're trying to do schematically. And so we spent some time this offseason watching more of the stuff of what he did a few years ago in LA and how can we incorporate some of that while also challenging him to take the next step in some areas of improvement for him as a player as well. So he's having a good offseason.
He's better at every aspect right now. He's killing it. He said we're doing a lot of the same concepts that we did last season. So now just having another year within the system, the leadership, the comfortability within the offense, the confidence that he has. And he's like, this is the best place I've seen him. Now, of course, he's like, I've only been here for, seen him last year as well. But this is the best place I've seen him. He looks better right now in spring than he did last season. Now, of course, he's going to have a good training camp as well as the backups as well. But this is the best place that he said that he's seen him. And I feel like that might be part of it as well. When you're not going through, hey, I'm recovering from this broken thumb, or hey, I just got traded, let me figure it out. Like, you have an off season where it's continuity. You're here, let's add weapons, you're the guy. Bring back, Ben Johnson, who was a big impact in the second half of the season, and he continues to credit him. You same quarterback coach. Let's keep consistency here. And that should help you in terms of everything. On top of that, the confidence they gave you because of how they build around you this offseason. Went on to talk about, basically turning things around in Detroit. And I'll hit on this quote, and then, you can definitely go check out the whole thing. It's definitely worth watching. But he went on to basically say, and Jason Kabinda was a hype man. He was pumped. Jason Kabinda, you could tell he truly believes the Lions are going to be very good this season. He truly believes that. He is excited. He went and said this. He said, when we get to winning this year, oh my goodness, the city's turning up. I promise. This city is going up. I mean up, like dying for a winner. I promise. I can't wait. This dude was talking Super Bowl. Jason Kabinda was hype. I loved it. It was getting me pumped. I'm like, all right, Jason, let's go then. And then Goff went on to say this. He said that flip around, right? Because you go with Cal, right? He talked about being with Cal, kind of how everything kind of happened late in the process for him, then happened late in the process to being drafted. But at the same time, the flip around to Cal to come in, he said, we only won one game. It was the second game of the season. You're getting blown out. Your family's there. You're going 1-11. And then to slowly turn that around to by the time he leaves, you're 8-5. You win a bowl game. That kind of turnaround. He said that flip around, there is nothing like it. And doing that in a place like this, with the fan base we have, with the people who are so passionate and the city wanting it for so long. I know it's been said a million times, but actually doing it is the opportunity of a lifetime. I know we've heard this many times, but every time I hear it, I get excited. And I really, truly believe that we can see that this season. We'll see, but I do believe it can happen this season. And I believe Goff can lead that way. But there was definitely a lot of hype in there. He was talking about his best moments, one of them being the Minnesota game where he threw the touchdown, and some of his worst moments. I won't go into all of it, because it's not my podcast. Going back to Todd Wash, I think a little note he threw in here is he feels like Jayshon Cornell is kind of a player that's been going under the radar. And it looks like Cornell's probably going to have a pretty big impact, especially now, not having Pennicini, where he talked about that and how they support him. But Jayshon Cornell, he said, is kind of a guy that's going under the radar. Looks like he'd probably be a 3-tech. He'll probably back up Levi, but who knows? Maybe some flexibility within there. But that makes sense to me. Weak side defense tackle makes a ton of sense. One-on-ones against guards, yes, that fits Jayshon Cornell's skill set. But that's what he feels like is kind of an under the radar player. But we've heard good things about Cornell, knocking passes down, getting sacks, playing with top reps. So because you're missing guys, he has an opportunity, and right now he's been showing out. So that's awesome. And it's really cool because he is, again, from the last regime. So if you can see a guy like that have success in his defense, that would be really awesome. To have a guy from the last regime, didn't really play with the last regime, to come in and have success with this one would be outstanding. That really tells a lot about your ability to get the best and find the best situation for your players. Finally, Mark Brunell, speaking of the quarterback position, the backups, he said, look, I'm confident in both Boyle and Blau. We're confident in both guys. You don't just bring those guys back because, hey, they were here last year. You bring them back because you're confident that they can be solid backups. And he feels like they're them. He said right now, he said, no, I feel like right now, like if we had to put them in a game right now, we would feel confident with them. And again, we've talked about this many times. I've talked about it many times, that the Detroit Lions maybe it shouldn't be as much about getting too focused on who the backup is, rather than making sure that our team is not completely awful. When the backup comes in the game, you literally have zero shot to win. We've had that happen in the past. We've had guys that have been announced as, well, they're solid backups, and then we get completely destroyed. Maybe you don't put it on the backup quarterback as much. We know what to expect out of a backup quarterback, but at the same time, being able to still be competitive and win games like that, which we were one play away from in Atlanta, right? I mean, we were very close in Cleveland, and it was an awful game for Boyle. The guy had 77 passing yards. You're 3 points away in that game, where if a couple plays go different, pick up a first down here and there, you win that football game. Improvement that we saw from Boyle, through the season, as he had time, was notable. Was he perfect? No. And I think one thing for him is he has to make sure that he keeps his mechanics smooth, because he can definitely throw it, off back foot, things like that. But he can just get caught a little bit with the mechanics too far off, and then the ball just gets a little bit away from him in the NFL. That's picked off. You're late, make decisions like that. It's picked off. So needs to clean things up. And the competition is good. We've been hearing that him and Blau have been kind of working back and forth, competing against each other. But they're very confident in these backup quarterbacks. I feel like we can win games with Boyle. If Boyle stepped in, I definitely believe we could win games. But again, to me, that's more of a team thing than it is a quarterback thing. The media always tries to make it about quarterback. And they're the most important piece, no question. But as a team, can we surround it? Can we be good enough where we can find a way to still be competitive when that guy is not there? That is a test, because we've seen good teams do it. Good teams still find a way. Baltimore, are they still the same? No, but they can be competitive. Baltimore, heck, even Seattle. I mean, we've seen it with Pittsburgh. That kind of thing is huge. And for us, we haven't been able to do that. But last year, I thought we started showing steps of, hey, we're kind of competitive even with the backup in the game. And to me, that's huge. You can ugly the game as much as you want, but as long as you find a way, that's all that matters at the end of the day. To me, that's what it's about, but at the same time, these are still young guys that are now getting reps. Going back to defense side real quick, they did speak on Amani, trying to be this kind of shutdown corner, which they're challenging him to be. They still want him to continue to take the ball away. He said with Amani, the one thing they're looking for is that they want him to be a more efficient open field tackler. So, little side note there. Those are the main notes that I took away from this. Definitely feel free to go check these out. They're on DetroitLions.com. They have all the pressers up there. Wasn't going to go through every single thing they said, but some of the main notes, my main takeaways from it. And definitely the podcast. It's definitely worth checking out. Let me know your thoughts and comments below. Thank you for watching.